Hi, my name is Cameron A. Bailey Sr., and we're here today with Ron Gordon. And the purpose of this interview is to talk about obstacles and how Ron is going to share about an obstacle he encountered and how he overcame that obstacle. All right, Ron?
All righty. Thank you, Cameron. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm Ron Gordon, and I help people fix and grow their businesses, especially in the fitness space. My typical clients are going to be small gym owners, personal trainers who want to take their business from wherever it is to the next level up. And that is a passion as well as a calling. I guess I've got it all in one space. I love what I do, and I have a whole lot of experience that I bring to the table. And I think that's the I can answer any questions, but in short, that's what do. I have a 3 second, a 30 second, a 3 minute, and a 10 minute interview or introduction rather. But let's start with that. Does that work?
Yes, that works. Thanks a lot, Ron. And I apologize. I want to say thank you for allowing this interview. So today I want to ask you about in regards to the success that you've experienced thus far, where you are at today. I'm sure and certain that you have encountered some obstacles along the way, some challenges, possible setbacks, and some disappointments. I'd like for you to, out of any of those, to choose one that's memorable and that you're comfortable to share. And if you would share what that is and how you overcame it, would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. And again, I'm happy to be here. So here's where I am in life. I'm living a life I designed a long time ago. And one of the things that I thought about in college a lot is I would go to college classes, and this is during the Vietnam War. So I'll just tell you, it was a ways back. And I would always look at the professors and think, what kind of experience do they have? What kind of real world experience do they have? And I thought at the time, I want to teach college someday, but I'm not going to do it from a platform of not having experience, just a bunch of theory. So I'm going to go out and get experience. And boy, did I experience. Experiences, I got scars. I got scars all up and down my back. I tell people that all the time because I learned a lot. I think the first thing I learned had to do with purpose. And I remember one of those days in college, we have a nasty snowstorm. And the rule on colleges is if the professor doesn't show up in 10 minutes, you can go home. Now, I don't know if that's a rule or just, urban legend or whatever it is. But I'm sitting there in the class and I'm watching people leave. Now, I had a family. I had a daughter and I had a wife. College was very significant to me. And I'm watching everybody leave. And finally, there are three of us left. The other two guys were Vietnam veterans. One was on permanent disability for the rest of his life because he literally got blown up and torn to bits, spent months I think it was a year and a half in the hospital and trying to recover from all that. And he was an amazing guy. Um, the stuff that happened to him, I won't get into all the details here, but what a guy. He was in college because he wanted to be there. The other Vietnam veteran was there because he wanted to be there. And there's Ron Gordon with no Vietnam experience. I needed to be there. I had a family. I had to feed my family. And I remember all three of us were there when the professor did walk in about 15 minutes late. We're the only three left. The professor looks at it and he said to us, he goes, I guess you're the serious guys. Now, this professor was beside himself because he'd been fighting through a blizzard to try and get there. And you could tell that on his face. He was a good guy. And so he went about and taught the class and stuff. And I've never forgotten that. And the first thing I learned is you got to have purpose. You got to have purpose in life. And as I mentioned, my purpose is to go out and get experience. So I got a lot of experience. And I started out my career, just a little bit more about me. I spent 10 years in the YMCA. I was one of the youngest, highest paid YMCA directors in the country at the time. And that was not necessarily because I was special, but because I had a lot of experience. I worked 4 years part time in the YMCA while I was going to college. So when I graduated, it was really easy at 22 years of age to get a job in the YMCA. And I moved up the organization very fast because I I corrected all the mistakes I made. And I made a lot of mistakes. But I also had more successes than failures. So at 26, or 27. I was one of the highest paid executive YMCA directors in the country. I'm running my own operation with 150 people reporting to me. Had no idea what I was doing. Actually, that's not quite true. The first 2 years, things were not going really well. The next 4 years, we broke every record in the book. And the reason we did that is I learned a very, very important lesson. You got to surround yourself with the right people. Until that point in time, I was surrounding myself with whoever's available. And I had an interesting conversation with the president of the Y one day, and it was enlightening. And I made some major changes based on what he said. And the changes really, really paid off. I went from my YMCA career to business ownership. I didn't want to stay in the YMCA at the time. I didn't like all the fundraising. I didn't understand what fundraising really was. And so I went on to do other things. I was an athlete, and I decided I wanted to compete in the Ironman World Championship Triathlon in Hawaii. I did that 3 years in a row. Ended up testing a bicycle that you pedal up and down. It was being built on a venture capital of $5 million. What an experience that was, because I could go around the world and I was a marketing guy. Came back from that experience, did some mergers and acquisitions of all things, helping people buy and sell businesses. Valuable experience. Remember, I'm trying to get experience here. Valuable experience on how to look at a business. And I worked for another corporation. I had my partner, one was a Harvard Law degree and the other had a PhD from Syracuse University. I
Okay.
thought I'm the luckiest guy in the world to be part of this team. 2 years later, I realized what a mistake I made. These guys didn't really understand business. And it's not a slam on them. They didn't understand the fitness business. So I went from there back to self-employment, and my daughter's Montessori school needed a principal. Why not? They asked me if I would be the CEO and principal. I didn't know. I had a degree in education, but I didn't know a whole lot about Montessori. 3 years later, I had accomplished their goal, which was to move them into their own building. And when I started, they were going out of business. They were getting rid of their CEO. They were basically bankrupt, and they're being evicted. 3 years later, I had them buying their own building. And then it was time to do something else. This is pivotal. At this point, I decided I need to work for myself. I use the term unemployable. I'm unemployable. I'm sick and tired of building other people's things. So now the fear really set in, because now I'm on my own. And this is a huge, huge obstacle, fear. And I decided to build a business as a trainer. My price point, I decided I'd charge twice what anybody else charged, and I go find people that could pay it. And then in order to get them, I had to make calls on the telephone. That was the best way. In the economy of 2008, 9, it was the best way to do it. Long story short, I made 1,200 cold calls to CEOs in the Rochester market. 18 months later, I was making 92,000 a year and working 20 hours a week. That's experience. So I had some experience. But I decided my mission was to serve more people. So I added a CrossFit gym, I added a bicycle training center, added triathlon training to my portfolio of things that I was doing. And then I reached a point in my life when it was time to think about retirement and that sort of thing. And I decided teaching college wasn't going to work. It was just going to be too restrictive for me. So I started my own business, Six Figure Trainers. I don't know if you can see that there, my shirt, but I started Six Figure Trainers because I wanted to train other gym owners and trainers how to overcome obstacles and make a living that they chose to make. So I started this program, and that's what I do now. The biggest obstacle I had early on, surrounding myself with the right people, that was huge. Staying on purpose, surrounding myself with people who are wind in my sails, not an anchor on my tail.
All right. So I've heard you mention uh, fear as one of the repeated obstacles. And are there any is there anything specific that you did or do when you encounter fear as a personal trainer or a business owner that you're aware of? Do you have a format, a strategy for dealing with fear that you could share with us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's really a couple things that I do. The first thing is to recognize that fear means I'm on the right track. Oftentimes people look at fear as a signal they shouldn't go somewhere, whatever. Now that can be, you walk to the edge of a cliff, fear is very real. But when it comes to building a business, fear just means we're outside of our comfort zone. Because the way our mind works, when we make a decision to move ahead, our subconscious mind looks through all the things we've done in our life and say, well, you've never done that before. Therefore, it can't be safe. And that's 90% of our brain is making decisions based on our past.
Okay.
10% of our brain wants the future, but the subconscious and unconscious part of our brains really control us. So we have to fight through that mental challenge to know we're in fear. I'm on the right path. Now, what do I do to overcome that? Is I have to study constantly, read books that talk about how to be successful. I have to immerse myself in positive thinking. I have to be very, very careful of who I spend my time with because I'm the average of 5 people that I hang around the most. And if they're sad and down and fearful, and they want to absorb their life in substance abuse or whatever, they're not for me. I need people who are out there dealing with fear on a daily basis, and they're saying, yes, Ron, you can do this. Come on, Ron, you know what's going on here. So I find it in the books. I find it with associations I keep. And I've had some great experiences of how people have actually lifted me over the obstacles because I hung in there with that group of people.
Okay.
Would you like an example?
Yes, please.
Okay. When I would decided I was going to be a trainer, I was going to charge twice as much as everybody else, and I was going to go find people that would pay for it. I was part of a mastermind group, and this is about 10 guys. And they
Okay.
were all looking for jobs. They were looking for jobs. I did that for 2 weeks, and I came back to the group and said, I'm unemployable. I don't want another job. And they said, well, to be part of this group, you have to look for a job. I said, I got another plan. I have got another plan. They said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to start a business and I'm going to charge twice as much as anybody else. I went through the whole thing and I'm going to find people to do that. And they looked at me and said, so what are you going to do? I said, okay, I'll make 20 calls to people I don't know every day, every week. That for 12 weeks, that would be 1,200 phone calls that I'll make to people I don't know. And they said, are you crazy? I said, no, I'm determined. I'm not crazy. I'm determined. They said, well, that'll work, but but what are you going to tell us when you come back and report every week? I said, I'll report on the number of calls I made.
Okay.
Okay. And so they said, well, this has never been done before in this group. To this day, the people who facilitate that group back in Rochester, New York say, yeah, we have a way of doing things. And Ron had his way. So after he did it his way, we tell people there's more than one way to do this. And so the interesting story is I was scared to death to make those phone calls.
Okay.
Every time it was an old school phone, every time I picked it up, those buttons, they were going to bite my finger. I knew it. But you know what? I use fear to my advantage.
How so?
I was not going to go back and tell those guys I didn't do it. The
Okay.
fear of making the phone call and not having money paled in comparison to facing those guys every week. I'd gone out on the line. I said, I'm going to do this. And they said, we'll hold you accountable. I said, that's exactly what I need. I need guys that understand my dream, understand my goal, and they're not going to take any crap from me. They're going to hold me accountable. So it was scary. It was scary. The first 6 weeks, nothing happened. That's 600 calls. And I kept going, kept going. Now, the next 400 calls, all kinds of things happen. And next thing I know, I'm at 1,000. I can see where I've got business now. I can get by. I
Okay.
can get by. So I went that week and I said, I don't know if I need to make any more phone calls. They grabbed my water bottle just like this. And they said, let's see if it's in focus here. Anyway, this is a water bottle. They grabbed my water bottle and said, Ron Gordon, you said 1,200. You haven't done 1,200. You'll get your water bottle back when you've done 1,200.
Okay. Did you do the 1,200?
You betcha I did the 1,200. That water bottle was worth $1 million to me at that point. What they did is they wouldn't take my excuses. They just wouldn't take my excuses, and they took my water bottle. And I went back home and I said, okay, I asked these guys for help. Now I'm really afraid. I'm afraid I know they'll give me the water bottle back, but everybody's laughing and grinning. And I just said, I'll be back. I'll be back. And I came back. And the difference between 1,000 and 1,200 phone calls was incredible. I would have gotten by on 12 on 1,000,
Okay.
but making the 1,200 put me in a position. 18 months later, I'm making $92,347 a year. I have no overhead. 18 months later. And so suddenly I had gone from destitute to now I'm making almost a six-figure income. Without those guys stealing my water bottle, that wouldn't have happened.
Okay.
Without my fear of hanging with good guys going places and not measuring up, I would have not made the phone calls. So the power overcoming fear was directly related to the people I hang around with and making myself vulnerable. That's a long, long story, but that's how I overcome fear, is hanging around the right people, setting myself up so that I'm in a corner. Now, today, my mind, my unconscious mind says you can make 1,200 phone calls. It's going to hurt. Every call is still going to hurt, but you've done it once and you can do it again. So no matter how bad things get, you know what you need to do, which is to get on the phone.
Okay. When dealing with fear and what you did, working to work through the fear to overcome the fear, has there been any other instances where fear has come back, even though it may have been about something else? Has fear come back?
All the time,
Okay.
every every day,
Okay.
every single day. I live and travel in an RV. I'm in the RV right now. Every new town I go to is a new experience. There's always uncertainty and sometimes fear involved. I travel alone. I'll go way out in the desert, set up my internet, and there's fear involved. The more I do it, the less fear is there. But I keep pushing the boundaries. I keep pushing the edge, going places I've never been. That's always going to involve fear.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. What I hear you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that after the first time you encountered fear and you're working through it and overcoming fear in that instance, that successive occurrences of fear have been easier to deal with. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes, it's easier to deal with because I understand fear is part of it. Now, when it comes to taking action, the fear is still there,
Okay.
but it's a little easier each time because I know, okay, I faced fear before. Take a breath. What do I need to do? And I understand now. The only way I'm going to overcome fear is to take action.
Okay. Great. So now you fear, I heard you say something different. Fear occurs. You take a breath. I've heard you also say you talk about it. You more or less do an assessment. And then I heard you say the important part is to take action.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, my next question is do you think you would have come across or dealt with fear as you did the first instance, the first time as you described in your story, if you had not been part of the mastermind?
No. And I'll tell you why. Prior to that, I had a goal, which was to do the Ironman World Championship Triathlon in Kona. That
Okay.
was big. That involved a lot of fear. But there was something about that one that my dream was so big that it drove me for 3 years. I competed 3 years in a row. My dream was so big that it drove me. And I knew that if I just trained enough, there was a connection. If I just train enough, it's going to happen.
Okay.
Okay. So that did happen. Now, when it came to calling the CEOs, I didn't have the experience to know if you make enough phone calls, it's going to happen. I had nothing in my background that told me that. That's where the people in that mastermind group were critical. Some of them were salesmen, and they would say things like it's a numbers game. Now, I intellectually knew that, but I didn't emotionally know that it was a numbers game. And so I would not have. The first one, the Ironman, that was a big fear thing. I overcame that alone. There were no other people out there doing Ironmans at the time. We were considered freak shows. I didn't care. My dream was so big, and I kept pictures of my dream around that it just drew me. The next one with the CEOs, that's a major challenge. That was harder for me because I couldn't quite see the connections. Now, those guys in the room just would kept 4 weeks in. I've made 400 calls. They say, you know what? We've been in sales before. Just keep going. Whatever you do, don't stop. Just keep going. So yeah, being around the right people was critical.
Okay. The Is there anything in this process that you may have said? I know you mentioned before that you read, there were books that you read. Is
Mhm.
there anything that you said to yourself, what some people call self-talk, or used any affirmations or anything along that line? Was there anything like that involved in your process?
Yes. Excuse me. It changed over time. I'm going to cough here. Sorry about that. We'll give you a
Mm,
chance to edit that out.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, I still do. I still do to this day. Last night, I write my affirmations on a 3x5 card. And my affirmations are an attempt to keep my mind focused on where I want to go and that it is possible. And one of my affirmations is something scary. That means every day I'm going to feel something scary. Another affirmation is do the hard things first. The ones you really don't want to do first thing in the morning, do that. And everything else is going to get easier because your confidence grows. Whew, got that out of the way. All right. What's the next thing on my list?
Okay. So what I hear you're saying so far is that there are that you're managing your thoughts. The obstacle is a feeling, and you're managing your feelings. In regards to the self-talk and affirmations, you're managing your words. And then finally you're managing your actions, and what I'm understanding is that you're with the management of your actions, that your actions become more not only specific but specifically focused toward fulfilling or obtaining and reaching your goal. Am I understanding correctly?
Yes. Yes. And organizing my thoughts and all that's all great stuff. And I've done it a million times where it's gone off the rails because the reality is it all starts with action. Emotion follows motion. Okay. Attraction, action is right in attraction. You take the word attraction, action is part of it. Pull the action out first, pull the motion out. Motion creates emotion, which is energy. So we need to move. We need to move. And if nothing else works and we're stuck, drop down, do 10 push-ups. You'll feel better. I'm serious. That's how I get back on track. The other thing I do is I set a finite amount of time that I'm going to be this focused. I'm not going to set myself up and say I'm going to be focused all day. That's crazy. If I can get 4 hours of focus a day, I'm a happy man. And so I don't just leave it unended. Well, I'm going to be focused 24/7. No, I'm not. I'm going to be purposeful as best I can, but the real focused energy, working on the hard stuff, working on the scary stuff, I only have bandwidth for a certain amount of time.
Okay, I understand. I myself also use frequent breaks to keep
Mhm.
myself fresh and to reduce stress and frustration. I from this conversation and listening to you, I understand and realize that we use different words, and so to I want it to be known or understood or see make far as if we agree that every human being has thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. Would
Mhm.
you okay?
Oh,
And
yeah.
and so I would say the use of those is a matter of management and how we choose the management. Sometimes, matter of fact, for most of my life, I didn't know how to manage them, and I was more reactive than responsive. And I want to kind of bring this to a close now. Is there anything in particular in regards to obstacles and the management of thoughts, feelings, words, and actions that you particularly want to share for that you would possibly say to your younger self in regards to in dealing with obstacles that your current clientele or tribe would benefit from hearing?
Yeah, I think I understand the question. And I do mentor other gym owners right now. So this is something, in fact, I just got off the phone a few minutes ago with one of them. And I think there's a lot of things that resonate with me, and certainly pictures and images are really, really important. And I will tell them oftentimes, you can't steer a parked car. And that's really our life. You can only steer a car when it's moving. We can only steer our life when it's moving. If we're not moving towards something, then we're the parked car. I mean, we're not going anywhere. So the image I always like to have people have, you can't steer a parked car. Start moving. Even if it's in the wrong direction, you can turn and come back
Yeah.
the other way. But all of our thoughts can be wrong. Our feelings can be wrong. Our emotions can be wrong. All that stuff. I mean, in the book Four Agreements, we talk about the power of words. And to your point, we're using different words, but I think our message is the same. We're different words because of different training and background. But I think when it comes right down to it, it's all the same. Controlling our lives and going in a direction. To me, the pivotal point is get the wheels moving. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yes, it does. Thank you. Um, is there anything far as I want to give you opportunity as far as I didn't know if you have an offer or a free gift for those that will come to watch the video?
Yes, I do. I do a free 30-minute consultation with anybody, just about anything. It's called a conversation with Ron. And if people have questions, especially about business, but it doesn't have to be related to business, because when it comes right down to business, a small business, it's the most significant personal development program we'll ever go through. A business does not move unless the owner moves. And that's the reality of everything, is that we have to be moving in, we're motion in some sort of direction. So the purpose of my conversation is help people get off dead center. Help people get off dead center. I used to love it when people come to me when I was in the fitness business and they'd say, I want to be more fit. Can you develop a program? I go, absolutely. Are you serious? And they all go, yes. And I had one guy do this. One guy do what I'm going to say next. I say, "Are you really serious?" And they go, "Yeah." I go, "Give me 10 push-ups." They go, "What?" I can't do it. I got my suit on. I said, "Okay." Blah blah blah. One guy looks at me and he says, "Right now?" I said, and he said he dropped down and did 10 push-ups. I said, "See, you got your fitness program going." I said, "It's that hard. It's that hard. All you got to do is get down and do 10 push-ups. And now I'm in a fitness program. So do 10 more tomorrow. If you want to add stuff down the road, feel free. Skip a day, you made a mistake. Skip 2 days, you got a new habit, and you're no longer in fitness. You don't have to go out for an hour walk, So that's the same thing in our brains. We don't have to have this wholesale change that, wow, I got a new attitude. It's not going to happen that way. One piece at a time. So my free conversation, we can put it in the notes, if you will, the link. I think just call up and schedule a time that works, and we'll have a conversation and get you moving. Because I'm a teacher. I may not be teaching college, but I have been my entire life a teacher. My grandparents are teachers. I'm a teacher, and I want to help people move off dead center. I mean, come on, we got all kinds of stuff in the world. We're going to live to be 120. The
Okay.
research is out there, by the way. The research is out there. We can go to 120, but we're not going to do it if we're sitting in a parked car.
All right, I'll make sure to add that link. And Ron, I want to thank you for this interview. Thank you for sharing your offer with us. I really do appreciate your making the time today. And for our viewers, thank you for watching this video. I want to leave you with a final thought. If we live the picture that we paint, then paint the picture you desire to live. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.